Hey guys, what's up? This is Pastor Rick, coming to you with another episode of Questions and Answers with Pastor Rick. Today's question is a big one. In fact, it may be the biggest. Down throughout the ages, philosophers and theologians have all wrestled with the question we are going to take a look at today. In fact, I can't imagine anyone who has ever lived who hasn't thought about this question at one time or another. The question is, does God exist? Can we know for sure? And what does it matter if He does? So who made who? How would you answer that question? Did God make us? Or did we make up God? Is there really a divine creator, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, who made all we see? Did God create us in His own image, as the Bible claims? Or did we create God in our image, as some philosophers would have us believe? As you can imagine, the way that you answer this question fundamentally changes the way you understand the world. If there is no God, then the world that surrounds us was not created. It just happened. Your life and the universe that surrounds you has no meaning or purpose. Morality evaporates. Good and evil reduced to mere human opinion. Right and wrong a fiction. Justice and truth, beauty an illusion. This life is all there is, so take what you can get by any means necessary. Life is short, and you don't have much time left. But if there is a God, then the world was created with purpose and meaning. Good and evil are not a fiction. Right and wrong are grounded in God's character and not the whims of shifting society. Truth, beauty, and justice reflect God's glory and can be understood and ultimately will be upheld. This life is not all there is. In fact, it's nothing but a handbreadth in comparison to eternity. And ultimately, every one of us will stand before God and give an account to our Creator for the way we have lived out the life that He gave us. Who made who? It's probably the greatest question we will ever consider. But how can we possibly answer it? Well, let's take a look at what common sense, reason, and eventually the Bible have to say about this life-shaping question. As we try to answer this question, let's pretend that you and I have set off on a week-long journey into an uncharted mountaintop wilderness. Day upon day, we hike and climb and struggle to push forward. We bring all of our own food and provisions, camping out under the stars, surrounded by untouched nature. And then at the end of day 5, we find a grassy break in the tree line. We sit down to take a rest after a long, hard day. And then suddenly, as you sit down, you feel a hard, foreign object beneath you. You reach down and grab it and pick it up, and you look at it. And to your shock and surprise, this is what you pull out from underneath. Yes, it's Emmett, the guy from the Lego movies. Oh no, it's actually just a regular Lego guy that my boys play with. But regardless, if you sat down on this little Lego guy there in the midst of that field, we would both immediately realize that someone had been there before us. Our trailblazing adventure, thinking that we had gone where no man had ever gone before, would quickly come to an end. Why would we so quickly come to the conclusion that someone had come before us? Why would it take only a split second to realize that if we found a figure like this in the field, someone else had been here first? Because Lego guys are made by man. They're designed and fabricated, distributed and manufactured. Little kids play with them and parents step on them. Legos don't grow on trees. They don't magically appear in the midst of a field. They're designed for purpose. It's a basic purpose, but it's a purpose nonetheless. And even the most basic of designs are irrefutable evidence that there's an intelligent designer who made them. Now let's dig a little deeper. Imagine that when you sat down, you didn't sit down on a little yellow Lego guy, but you sat down upon this thing. I grew up in Sunnyvale, California, just outside Cupertino, and Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the co-founders of Apple Computer, graduated from my high school. They started in their garage and ultimately built what is arguably the most recognizable technology company in the world. And what's interesting is that in the early days of Apple, if you turned your phone around and carefully read the small print on the back, it reads, "Designed by Apple in California." Both this Lego guy and this first generation iPhone did not randomly appear by chance in the woods or in the factory. They were designed. They were designed by men and women with intelligence and wisdom and skill. If we were to see this iPhone there in the field, we would know that someone had been there before us, because the iPhone provides unmistakable evidence of the existence of the one who designed it. Now, often we use terms loosely. We talk about the evolution of the iPhone from 2007 to 2020. And there's no reason not to use terms loosely, but sometimes they inadvertently muddle our thinking. The iPhone did not evolve from 2007 to 2020. Nothing could be further from the truth. It didn't evolve by accident or by chance. It did not evolve by random errors in the software code and hapless mistakes in the manufacturing process. No matter how much time you allow between iPhone releases, mistakes and manufacturing defects will not unwittingly produce a better iPhone. That's not how technology advances. Intelligent men and women put countless hours carefully, critically improving and expanding its design, redeveloping its software, and upgrading its innovative hardware. Their efforts are remarkable. And year after year, because of the investment, creativity, and ingenuity that they pour in, one generation outperforms another. That's design. It's not random chance or accident. It's critical thinking and painstaking technological development. Now you may say, what do Legos and iPhones have to do with whether or not God exists? If I were to show you a Lego guy and then show you the latest iPhone, which would you say is more complex? Which is the result of a greater amount of design and intelligence? You'd probably say the iPhone. But now let's look at something else. Let's use the same reason and common sense that we've been employing and turn our attention to me. Take a careful look at me. I was not made by men or manufactured in a plant. So how did I get here? Who designed me? Who gave me my hands and my feet, my heart and my mind? Or let's start with this. Who gave me my eye? By any measure, the human eye is a marvel of design. It surpasses anything that man has ever made. Even with all of our technological advancements, we cannot duplicate it, we can't manufacture it, and we can't grow it in a lab. The human eye can see 10 million colors. In the fraction of a second, it can focus on an object from 1 inch to a mile away. No human camera in the history of photography can do what the eye can do. We simply cannot match it. The outside of your eye is made up of the cornea and sclera, which are connected by a ring called the limbus. Whenever your eye moves, even just a little, the iris, the colorful part of your eye, automatically readjusts the exposure, carefully regulating the size of your pupil as it reacts to darkness or light. When you focus on an object, the lens of your eye refracts the image you see onto the back of your eye, called the retina, where special light-sensing cells called cones and rods transform light and color into electrical signals. And those signals are then relayed via retinal ganglion cells through the optic nerve to multiple areas of your brain, including the thalamus and hypothalamus. Finally, your brain interprets these impulses, giving you the ability to see the world around you. Pretty amazing design, don't you think? Where did it come from? Now, let me ask you a question. Would you trade your eye for this Lego guy? Or would you trade your eye for this iPhone? How about for this one? No, you wouldn't, would you? Your eye is immeasurably more valuable than either of these things could ever be. And why? Because God designed your eye so that you could experience the world that He made and see His glory in creation. The Bible says it this way in Psalm 19, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of His hands." A little bit further in Romans chapter 1, verse 19, it says, "For what can be known about God is plain to men, because God has shown it to them. His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made." What's interesting is that Charles Darwin, in The Origin of the Species, wrote these words, "To suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for correcting spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection seems I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. Darwin recognized that the inherent design that seemed undeniable in the human eye seemed to point to a creator in an unmistakable way. And yet he went on, listen to his words. Reason tells me that if numerous gradations from a simple imperfect eye to one complex and perfect can be shown to exist, each grade being useful to its possessor, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, should not be considered subversive of our theory. I don't know about you, but I use the same reason that Darwin uses. And as I look at the human eye, I see something very different than what he sees. I see something that was designed by God in marvelous and miraculous ways to give us the ability to see the world around us, to see the things that God has made, and ultimately to see and know Him in our lives. The scriptures tell us that the fool says in his heart there is no God. And the scriptures don't mean by that a foolish or stupid man, but one who has turned his back on what is obvious to live his life the way that he chooses to live it. Does God exist? Can we know that He does? I think that as we look around us, the wonders of creation are ample testimony to the fact that God is the creator of all that we see. None of us can stand before Him on that final day and pretend that we've led just lives. But the good news is that the creator of the universe is also our Redeemer. He sent His Son to die for our sin that we might be forgiven of our wayward ways, and that we might be reconciled to the one who made us, that we might know not only the wonders of creation, but the wonderful love and heart of the Creator who made us for His glory. If you put your faith in Jesus Christ, my hope and prayer is that you've done just that. If you've got some thoughts on this difficult question, I'd love to hear them. And if you've got a big question that you'd like a biblical answer to, then drop it in the comments below, and I'll try to answer it in a future Q&A session. Hope you guys have a great week, and hope to see you next week on Q&A with Pastor Rick.